yet. It just says going live. We are live. Awesome. Well, hi everybody. Welcome to DNA and WikiTree Hangout with our special guest, Peter J. Roberts. I'm Tammy. I'm the Community Assistant and Playground Monitor for WikiTree, and I'll be moderating this evening. For those of you who are watching and aren't familiar with WikiTree, we're a 100% free genealogy site committed to working together as a community to create a single, collaborative, worldwide family tree using traditional genealogy sources, methodologies, and DNA tests. If you're watching live on Google+, please feel free to post questions in the comment section below the video. We'll try to answer as many of them as we can during the Hangout. Now we're going to go to the leader of our DNA project, Kitty Smith, who will give us a brief introduction about Peter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kitty Smith. I am the administrator, the leader for the DNA project on WikiTree. And I'd like to introduce Peter Roberts, who is going to help us learn a little more about DNA and what it can do for us as far as our research is concerned. Peter is a prominent member of our WikiTree DNA project. He's the brains behind a lot of it and probably most of it. He's instrumental in the advancement of our DNA tools on our website. Education-wise, he is an associate professor and archivist at Georgia State University. He has an undergraduate degree in art history from Emory University and a graduate degree in museum education from the George Washington University. He's been involved with genealogy and interested in genealogy research for 40 years and has been active for the past 10 years in the genetic side of genealogy research. He is the administrator for the Bahamas DNA Project on family tree DNA, and he's in charge of 3 DNA surname projects, which are Roberts, Sasser, and Rustin. He is the past Atlanta Regional Coordinator for the International Society of Genetic Genealogy. And let's welcome Peter Roberts. He is WikiTree number 7085 if you want to look him up on WikiTree.
Thanks very much, Kitty, and thank you, Ewan and Chris and everyone else at WikiTree who's making all this possible. I joined WikiTree about a year ago in July of 2013, and since that time I've been really enthusiastic about what DNA can do with a single family tree. I really began as I had the Bahamas DNA Project, and I needed a way to see good descendant charts and good ancestral trees, and I was looking around for something where my participants could collaborate together in building the trees, and that's how I stumbled upon WikiTree. And I just want to say that the idea of a collaborative single worldwide tree is simply brilliant, and the website architecture and the page design is outstanding. Okay, so I've been doing genetic genealogy for about 10 years. I'm currently more excited now than I've ever been in terms of what can happen when more of the DNA is associated with a database for a single family tree for human ancestry. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the best online genealogy database for family historians with DNA results. Some people in WikiTree have known, there are some people in WikiTree that have a known direct maternal line ancestry that goes back about 25 generations, or about 1,000 years. And there's now, with the tools that we currently are using, we can use Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA to confirm direct lines back to confirm that they're accurate. And it's all about using the DNA to support or disprove the existing genealogical records. We've got an audience here that of all levels of understanding about genetic genealogy, and if you don't understand some of the words or the concepts, I hope you'll take the time to seek the answers. WikiTree's G2G question and answer forum is excellent. and because it follows the concept of wiki answers. Previous DNA results have been answered there already, and you can see by the rating system which are the better answers. Here are the basic facts. There are 4 types of DNA for genealogy, useful for genealogy. Each type has a different inheritance pattern. Y-DNA helps trace a male's direct paternal line. Mitochondrial DNA helps trace a male or a female's direct maternal line. Autosomal DNA helps with the ancestry on all branches of your ancestry within about the last 5 generations. And the X chromosome is useful for specific portions of your ancestral tree. I have blogs that do a better job of describing this. To find them, Google Peter Roberts WikiTree, and you'll find my profile. At the bottom of my profile are links to blogs about WikiTree and DNA, which cover Y-DNA, mitochondrial DNA, and X-DNA. These blogs are a better introduction than my quick verbal description. If you're male or female, I recommend ordering the mtDNA Plus from Family Tree DNA. It costs $59. Mitochondrial DNA is passed virtually unchanged from mother to child. And so it reveals the mitochondrial DNA of your direct maternal line only. Once you get your results, go to your mtDNA Matches page at Family Tree DNA and use the Upload button to transfer those results to MitoSearch. And add your MitoSearch ID to your DNA test page at WikiTree. If you're male or female, if you're male or female, and you want to test, if you're male and you know a male that you want to test, order the Y-DNA 37 test from Family Tree DNA. Y-DNA is passed virtually unchanged from father to son. It also reveals the Y chromosome for a male's direct paternal line only. Upload your Y-DNA results to your Matches page to YSearch, and then enter your YSearch ID to your DNA test page at WikiTree. One of WikiTree's first DNA features allowed you to see who had been DNA tested. This was improved to associate the type of DNA test. This was improved to associate the type of DNA test with the appropriate ancestry. WikiTree recently introduced the DNA Ancestor Confirmation Aid. It helps you figure out which of your living relatives could take a Y-DNA test or a mitochondrial test in order to confirm ancestry. For example, if you and your 5th cousin both share a direct maternal line ancestor back to your 4th great-grandmother, you could both take mitochondrial tests, and if you matched, you would confirm that both of your direct maternal lines are accurate back to your 4th great-grandmother. In the confirmation aid, you simply click 2 boxes and click on Compare. If they match sufficiently, then you can add your mitochondrial confirmed templates to profiles for your direct maternal line ancestors back to your 4th great-grandmother. It's a similar process for Y-DNA. Now, if you're female or male, order the autosomal test from Family Tree DNA or 23andMe or Ancestry DNA. Upload your results to GEDmatch and DNA GEDCOM. Enter your IDs into WikiTree. These results also include your X chromosome. WikiTree allows you to see which relatives closer than your 4th cousins have had an autosomal DNA test. WikiTree is currently working on ways to confirm ancestry using autosomal DNA and XDNA. Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA are the most useful tests. Autosomal DNA is more popular in many cases, but is often too easy to misunderstand what the results are telling you or how to use many of the autosomal matching tools that are provided. One general observation is that the people in WikiTree, a lot of people in WikiTree don't seem to get genetic genealogy as a whole, and a lot of genetic genealogists don't understand the concept of WikiTree. Both groups in general are not quite understanding each other. That's what I'm seeing, and I hope I'm wrong about this. I think genetic genealogists have to understand better how to collaborate with other genealogists about their family trees. And WikiTree users need to understand that genetic genealogy is really helpful for finding and confirming ancestry, and also genetic genealogy does not compromise your privacy as some might imagine. Most genetic genealogists who do not use WikiTree have a difficult time seeing people's ancestral trees. The ancestral trees at Family Tree DNA, 23andMe, and YSearch and MitoSearch are usually relatively poor, and the interface those interfaces can certainly be improved. And genetic genealogists are relatively good at sharing their DNA test results, but not so good with sharing ancestry. If you're willing to share ancestry, communication is often difficult because there's lots of emails back and forth, and you have to share passwords for Ancestry.com, login procedures and such. So I really, when I started with WikiTree, I expected that users with the users at WikiTree, because they have such great ancestral information and the excellent interface here and the usually good genealogical information, I thought that they would want to share their DNA results. But currently, only about half of the people that have said that they've taken a DNA test will easily show you what those DNA test results are. What needs to be understood is that if somebody wants to try to maintain a sense of privacy at WikiTree with their DNA results, they can list the test taker as anonymous. The first name is anonymous. And I think that's an important concept to get across. Just one sec. Okay. It's really important that in order to be able to facilitate the sharing of DNA results, it's really important to upload DNA test results to public databases like YSearch and MitoSearch or GenMatch, and also to enter those IDs into WikiTree. Not doing this, I sort of liken it to if you buy a pair of prescription sunglasses or prescription eyeglasses and you never wear them, because you need to if you pay all the money to do all the DNA testing, then to really take advantage of it, you need to share the data. When somebody takes a DNA test, one of the important questions that they often ask is, how do we match and where can we see the ancestry? These are really simple questions. If you enter the results in YSearch and MitoSearch, and you have your ancestry in WikiTree. So it's really important to have that information in the databases. Another thing that would be very helpful is if we could get more people to use the DNA features as they're intended. There are some people that want to say they have DNA results and they put it in their profiles and not in their DNA test results page. And anyway, so there's instructions to follow. One of the important things is that the help pages that we have for the genetic genealogy in WikiTree, it's a collaborative process, and so it's really nice that anyone who has writing skills, they can enter and improve the help information that we have for genetic genealogy for WikiTree. And so that whole collaborative process also in creating an ancestral tree also translates well into doing help pages for DNA and genetic genealogy. Genetic genealogy really requires a lot of a good amount of education, and so it's really helpful to have people collaborating together and educating each other. The question that I have for everyone listening here is, what DNA features would you like to see in WikiTree? It's been my experience that if you have an idea for a DNA feature that's beneficial and it's not too difficult to implement, then it will happen. We need good input from users for more DNA features which are going to be useful and easy to use. And the other thing is that we're talking about, with Y-DNA, we're talking about comparing haplotypes, not haplogroups. And those are two concepts that people need to understand. And the haplogroup labels, things like R1b, those things have changed over time. And it's very easy for someone to say, well, I'm haplogroup R1b and you're haplogroup RM222, and then think that these are not related people. They couldn't be related when, in fact, one is a subgroup of the other. One of the questions that I received was, they said that I'm interested in genetic genealogy. What can be supported by, that can be supported by documentation? I've triangulated a 27 marker test. What should I consider the big Y test? What can I gain from this new information? Currently, I don't recommend the big Y test. If you're interested in family history within the last several hundred years, the Y37, the Y-DNA 37 or the Y-DNA 67 test is still much more useful in confirming direct paternal lines in a genealogical time frame. Testing like the big Y should be more useful in a few years. There's a lot of advancements that are happening in that area, but it's awfully expensive. It's still quite expensive, and you get a lot more bang for your buck if you're using matching of haplotypes like the 37 marker test or the 25 marker test even. Another question that I received was, please explain what I might learn from an X chromosome test. The X chromosome test is included in the autosomal DNA test. It's not an additional cost. Some X DNA matches are due to shared ancestry long ago, but a lot of the what you get in terms of the X chromosome matching, some of it's due to more recent shared ancestry. And the X DNA matches, hang on just a second. Okay, so the X DNA matches can only be due to shared ancestry that you have on your X chromosome ancestral tree, which is a specific part of your ancestral tree. And it doesn't include branches where there is a father followed by a son. So think of your ancestral tree, and wherever you see a father followed by a son, then that part of your ancestral tree is not in your X chromosome ancestral tree. Now, WikiTree can automatically create your X chromosome ancestral tree. And all you have to do is click on the button that says X chromosome ancestral tree and share that link with any of your X chromosome matches. And then ask them, do you have any of these ancestors in your ancestral tree? Or any of those surnames in your ancestral tree? And it's quite likely that the matching that you're going to get on your X chromosome is going to be due to that shared ancestry. Okay. Now, Paul Smith asked about getting a particular SNP that he says is found in the big Y test. And in order for, there is a Thomas Cran of YSEQ.net does specific, he specializes in single SNP testing, and he also wanted to know where that particular SNP resided on the Y haplogroup tree, and I recommend joining message boards for that likely subgroup. And there is a fair amount of, he also asked about what the flexibility is in STR markers, and there's a good bit of flexibility there. And from Richard Smith asked, he has the 111 marker test, and he can't figure out why he has so many matches, and they don't have the same surname as him. He's looked at their GEDCOM tree, and he can't find his surname on their GEDCOM tree. And the thing is that with a Y-DNA test, is that you need to pay attention to the direct paternal line only, not the whole GEDCOM, just the father's 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 father of the male that you match. and you don't need to look for your surname on other branches of that tree. And if you don't match other males with the Smith surname, then I recommend trying to determine if your matching surnames have a geographical origin. For example, if you matched mostly with Welsh or Scottish surnames, then that may explain the different surnames, since surnames for many ancestors in those countries became fixed recently than, say, a country like England. And then some Smiths may have only tested to 12 or 25 markers. Some you tested to 111. Some may have tested just a few markers. So if you match on 11 out of 12 markers, or let's say 12 out of 12 markers, then you want to ask those people to upgrade to more markers and to see if the match holds up at, let's say, 37 markers. Try to find a male cousin with the Smith surname who's, let's say, about a fifth cousin or so, and have him take a 25 or 37 marker test to see if he matches you. And if he matches other Smiths and he doesn't match you, then you have your answer. And then one of the things about correspondence with other people is that it's really helpful if you include your the URL or the web address for your ancestral tree in WikiTree when corresponding, because they can very easily then see your ancestral tree. And with that, I give it over to more questions.
That's awesome, Peter. Thanks so much. So far, we've got lots of questions for you. Kitty Smith has one. I'm going to go ahead and put her on here. Go ahead, Kitty.
Hi, Peter. Peter, you were talking about haplotypes and haplogroups. Can you give us an example of each? Because I'm not really clear on what the distinctions are.
Okay. So when you take a standard, let's say you order a Y-DNA 37 test, your results are going to be various numbers. You're going to get 37 numbers, and those are they're basically just that's your haplotype, is those 37 numbers. And you could also take a Y-DNA 12 test, and you get 12 numbers, and that's your haplotype. That's a 12-marker haplotype. That is what's used for comparing with other males and other males with your same surname. And you may have, you want to have about at least 90% or more of those 12 markers or those 37 markers matching each other. And if you say if you're matching those 37 markers and you have the same surname, most of those 37 markers, and you have the same surname, then you share a direct male line ancestor with that surname in a genealogical time frame. Now, that's what's useful for genetic genealogy. The haplogroup is there's different mutations that have happened on the Y-DNA since the common ancestor for all males on the direct line of descent. There's various mutations that have happened, and those mutations define haplogroups or subhaplogroups. And those mutations, in most cases, happened thousands of years ago, and so they're not useful for genetic genealogy in the regard. What we're interested in comparing and using it for genealogy. So you need to pay attention to the haplotypes, those 37 markers, and how closely they match each other. Now, the thing that you can use with haplogroups is that if you're haplogroup E and another person is haplogroup R, then you're not going to be related in a genealogical time frame on your direct male lines. And so that can tell you that you're not related. But if you're both R, it doesn't tell you that you are related. You've got to look at the haplotypes, those 37 markers.
Okay, yeah, I've always just called it the result.
Okay.
Peter, we had a question over in the forum section. Sandy Barnett asks that she says her first cousin is willing to take the 67 Y-DNA test, but doesn't want to be in charge of it on WikiTree, and he also doesn't want to have his name all over it. So, wants to maintain some privacy with it. Could she, as another user, if she creates a profile for her cousin, and as long as it's male, marks it male, if that's the case, would it be?
Call him anonymous as the first name, and then have him use his real last name, and then have his results be, as they are with a living person in terms of being able to see their ancestral tree and their biography, their profile, their biography. And so I think that's
And that would be entered on his profile. Would she also
his
be able?
profile.
Would she,
And
if
then
she has her own, results, then she can also post those on her own
on her
profile as well?
profile, yeah. You want to have a profile for the tester, and then the tester's real parents and their real grandparents, and then the other cousin who paid for the test, let's say, they would have their own profile. And if they took a mitochondrial test or an autosomal test, then they could have their own results for them. We want to make sure that the DNA results are associated with the test taker. Let me just point out one thing that has certainly happened is in WikiTree now is that some people have said that their ancestor took the test, and there is some cleanup that needs to be done to make sure that it's the test taker that the results are associated with, not the ancestor. Okay.
Great. Chris, you want to go ahead and ask a question there?
Sure. Peter, thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation, and thank you so much for doing that. And thank you again for all you've done for WikiTree and our DNA features. As far as we've gotten, we really could not have gotten here without you. So thanks again for that. I wanted to read a question that my friend Roland Arsenault asked in the G+ forum. He writes, "You've touched on the fact that the companies have poor trees, and I've noticed that as well. I've also dabbled with DNA GEDCOM and GEDmatch, sites to work with DNA from all the companies, and those seem a bit rough to me. What tool do you think could be developed by a programmer interested in contributing to help all genetic genealogists?"
I think I'm not sure if this really refers to ancestral trees or in terms of what a programmer could do for genetic genealogy. The thing is that from my perspective, the single ancestral tree is really an ideal platform for associating DNA. Using DNA and associating with ancestry, you really need a single ancestral tree, from my perspective. And I think the interesting programming thing is going to be working with the autosomal DNA to use that as a confirmation aid, because it's very easy with with certain systems such as Ancestry DNA. It's very easy to say, two people match each other, and what you see, you automatically go for the closest shared ancestry. That's the reason for the match. Whereas the ancestry, their true ancestry, could be where a part of your ancestry that you don't know about, and so it's really important to make sure everyone who's matching on a segment is matching each other on the same segment, and that's key. The thing is, using autosomal DNA as a confirmation aid, like we're already using for the Y DNA and the mitochondrial DNA, that's going to be very significant. And the thing is that what I want to impress upon is that what's already possible with Y DNA and mitochondrial DNA is phenomenal, but it's not being used to the potential that it could be used. Is that more people? I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of Y DNA and mitochondrial DNA results that have been taken by genealogists, but they're reluctant to get them on WikiTree right now, or they don't know about WikiTree or whatever. It's just a phenomenal amount of information that could be used to confirm ancestry, and so I just hope that more people will understand how beneficial it will be to confirming ancestry, and what a really phenomenal collaborative group that the WikiTree community is.
Well, thanks. Hey, we've got a couple more questions. First, I totally neglected to introduce folks. We've just been pointing at Chris, and Chris is our WikiTreeer-in-chief. Absolutely can't pass by that. Next on the panel underneath here, just to give a quick intro on folks, Genealogy Chick, that's Awen, whose camera doesn't seem to be working well. She's the forest elf at WikiTree. Next to Awen, we have Kitty, who is, as we introduced earlier, our resident DNA expert and a project leader for WikiTree. We've got our speaker, Peter, who is speaking. Richard Smith is a member and active user of WikiTree. We also have this Richard Smith right there, and we have Tom Shaw. Sorry about that. Tom Shaw, who is one of our leaders. And Tom, I believe you had a question you wanted to ask.
Yeah. I wanted to know, in your opinion, what do you think a significant percentage of the population would be, as far as what do you envision a significant percentage of the population being as having completed genetic testing? I know that people are getting results now with the tests that have been done now, but
Please turn all information
as
technology second floor technology desk.
I'll stop in a second. I'm sorry.
Whoops.
I can't control that. Okay, so in terms of the DNA testing that's been done, what percentage of the population has been tested?
Yeah, and where do you see it? I mean, at what point do you see it really being valuable? At like, say, if 10% of the population is tested and has their results and is willing to share them.
There's some of the rarer surnames for the Y-DNA testing and confirming the direct male lines for rarer surnames. It's very well documented in terms of all of the ancestral lines that go back to a certain time period, like the colonial time period. It's thoroughly documented now. But there are some larger groups of surnames like Johnson and things like that they have to do a lot more testing in order to get a good sample size. I know that I'm involved in the Bahamas Project, which is a small geographical one, and we know a lot of the surnames, the direct male lines, and we know a lot of the certain populations of the Bahamas. We know we've thoroughly tested them, and it's getting harder and harder to find people that don't belong to certain maternal lines or don't belong to certain Y-DNA lines. And so there are certain geographical areas that are well documented, and
right.
It's just there's certainly more that can be done, and it's a exciting future.
Right.
But I don't know exactly what the percentage would be in order to get a good sample size, let's say. But
right.
I know that some surnames are well done.
Okay. Thank you.
We've got another question over in the forum, Peter. Meg's one of our new leaders at WikiTree would like to know, what's the difference between an FS-MT DNA test and an autosomal test?
Oh, okay. The full sequence mitochondrial DNA test is only looking at the entire mitochondrial DNA, and it looks at it's the entire mitochondrial DNA. So then the autosomal test is something completely different, in that it doesn't include any autosomal. The autosomal test does not include any mitochondrial DNA, and so the autosomal test, like a family finder test or an ancestry DNA test, is looking at the 22 chromosomes that we have, portions of them. Now, the confusing thing is that 23andMe will also report haplogroups for mitochondrial DNA and the haplogroup for Y-DNA if you're male, and so that confuses people because but it's only reporting an estimate of your those haplogroups, but it's mostly a autosomal test, the 23andMe test. So there's completely different. I mentioned earlier on there's 4 types of DNA: mitochondrial, autosomal, X chromosome, Y chromosome, And so they're just completely different tests and different ancestry that's being revealed.
Great, thank you so much. Chris Whitten has another question to ask. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Tammy. Peter, I wanted to ask, what do you think about the relationship between traditional genealogy and genetic genealogy, going forward? I think some genealogists have this worry that maybe the DNA is meant to be a substitute for traditional genealogy. What do you think about that relationship between the two?
I'm always reminded that it's the DNA supports the traditional genealogy. You've got to have in virtually all cases, you've got to have the paper records that tell you this is what we believe to be the ancestry, and then the DNA can be used to confirm that or not, or show that it's, or to disprove it. There is a branch. You can. This does not really apply to WikiTree, but you can use DNA to reconstruct when there is no known genealogy. You can figure out which males are more closely related to each other than they are to other males, and with the same surname. And you can, in a sense, start reconstructing a tree. And why people are excited about Big Y is that it can really take that down to a precise level, where you can really start reconstructing. If you were able to sequence the entire Y chromosome, you could theoretically, you might be able to reconstruct the human ancestral tree on the direct male line pretty thoroughly, which is really exciting. But we're not there yet, and we've got some hurdles to overcome in terms of how to deal with the volume of DNA, volume of information we're getting from these the Big Y test and similar tests. It's hard to work with all that amount of information, but there's some very smart people that are looking at it, and I think we're going to be in a really exciting place in a couple of years.
Yeah. Tom has another question. I'm going to go to Tom.
Yeah, I'm asking this for everybody who's submitted samples and gotten their results back, and how they really know what to do with them. I recently received my results back from an autosomal test, and one of my maternal second cousins provided me with a Y-DNA report for her father, who is now deceased. What can I do to maximize the usability of the data in these two reports, and would it be beneficial for me or my mother to submit a sample for this same analysis, the Y-DNA?
Okay. If you're just looking at Y-DNA, and you and the deceased male relative that you have, if you both have the same surname, then probably you don't need to take a Y-DNA test. If you're pretty sure that that's your father or that's your grandfather or whatever, then you're only going to get, you may find out that you're not related. But if you wanted to know that, you'd want to take a Y-DNA 12 test, which is inexpensive. It's always been, everyone would benefit by doing an autosomal DNA test. Everyone would benefit. Siblings, uncles, everyone would benefit. The incredible thing is that if anyone listening has living parents, both of their parents are living, or if any of their parents are living, if they have not had autosomal tests, you need to test them, because it's really important to phase your data. And that's something that you can look up on the internet about phasing of autosomal DNA. It's exceedingly powerful to be able to phase your data. And you can't, it's hard to do that, but it's easy to do if both of your parents are living, and then you also take the same test. The thing is that to optimize your DNA results, you want to get those DNA results in public databases, such as the Y-DNA results into YSearch, the mitochondrial DNA results in MitoSearch, and the autosomal DNA results in DNA GEDCOM, and forgot the other one, GEDmatch.
GEDmatch, yeah. The only thing is, no one in my family that I know of has done an mtDNA test. Would that be helpful now? Or?
Yeah, like if you took a mitochondrial test, it would tell you about your mother's 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 line. If your father is alive and he takes a mitochondrial test, it'll tell you about his mother's 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 line. So they'll be different. They'll be different, and that's useful information. And as you know, there are in WikiTree, we've got a mitochondrial line that goes back past Richard III, King Richard III, and that's an extensive line. And there's probably other mitochondrial lines that we haven't found that that go back that far that no one's paid to have a $59 test. And revealing that line and then testing a distant cousin is going to confirm that line. It's really inexpensive to get really powerful information about saying that this ancestry is confirmed to be accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Kitty's got something she wanted to add. I'm going to defer to Kitty.
Well, am I on?
Yes.
I just wanted to add your thought on the projects. At FTDNA, you can do a search for a surname project or a geographical project. So, for instance, if you wanted to search for Smiths, you can find there are at least 3 projects that deal with Smiths. There's each surname has a separate project which concentrates on that geographical area or that name. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to say that people should be able or should look at the Family Tree DNA website to search for those projects.
Yeah, ideally you want to have one project for one surname, ideally, but that does not always happen. There are also haplogroup projects, and there's regional projects and all different types. But anyway, did I answer the question?
Yeah, there really wasn't a question. It was
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Anybody?
I've got one.
Okay.
Is that you, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Genetic genealogy testing is done by a relatively small number of companies, and some of them have claimed that the results of those tests will be held in perpetuity.
Okay.
One of these companies decided to retire their Y-DNA and mtDNA testing.
Yeah.
Now they are planning to destroy the data that is generated from those tests from previous analyses.
Mm-hmm.
Despite efforts of the genealogical community to persuade them to seek alternatives to destruction of the data, the fact is they are entitled to do whatever they want with that data.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, is there anything further that can be done to keep this from happening, and if not, what advice do you have for people who would want to ensure that their data is saved for future generations?
Okay, there was test results, and then there's the actual DNA sample.
Right.
And the really sad thing is the people that tested one of their like their father or their mother, and that person has passed on, and that now they can't do another test on that sample. That's the sad thing.
Yeah.
That testing company has said that a lot of their samples were no longer any good. But I don't know the inner workings of that. But anyway, the key thing is I looked at who at WikiTree has said that they tested with Ancestry DNA. Who's going to be they're the ones that are no longer going to be keeping the Y-DNA and the mitochondrial DNA. I asked all of the people that have done a Y-DNA test, I've asked them to upload their results to YSearch and to enter their YSearch ID into WikiTree. That would save the result information. It wouldn't save the actual DNA, the DNA sample, which would allow them to do additional testing. My next project is to contact all the people that did a mitochondrial test with Ancestry DNA and ask them to do the same thing about uploading to MitoSearch and then adding the MitoSearch IDs to WikiTree, and that will save that data. But a lot of people they spend a lot of money for these tests, but they're not following through. And as I mentioned before, you pay a lot of money for something that's really powerful, but then you don't use it, and that's a sad thing that it hurts me, I guess, in terms of it's wasted potential.
Right.
Well, thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Awen now, and she's going to ask one of the questions from the forum area.
I can't answer it. Roland Arsenal, who's one of our WikiTree leaders, asked, so I have tested and got my parents tested as well. Who else should I get tested? Is it better to get my grandmother tested? What about my cousin or uncle? How should I prioritize additional tests to get the most useful results?
Okay. You definitely, if you've got a living grandparent, you definitely want to test them, and you definitely want to have them. Like I recommend testing at WikiTree DNA because they have a policy on storing the DNA sample for later testing. It's going to be really important to do some Y-DNA testing and some mitochondrial testing of the various lines of the various people that are still living. Because that you can get right now, that's a lot more powerful information than the autosomal in terms of how it applies to WikiTree and confirming ancestral lines. Because it's pretty haphazard right now with the autosomal and the X chromosome. We can try to make some inferences, but it's the confirmation is really happening with the Y-DNA and the mitochondrial DNA. And so you want get the DNA samples of all the old relatives that you can, and then you can have some time before they die. You can even after they die. Then you can once you have those samples, then you can figure out what tests you want to run on them. But there's a lot of people that have done an autosomal test that could really benefit from doing Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA.
Awesome. That's just wonderful. I'm learning actually so much tonight. I'm not up on all the DNA details, but I feel like I'm at least knowing what's going on. Does anybody else have anything? Any other questions that they want to ask or talk about with Peter? Kitty?
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh.
Well, I was gonna ask maybe if Peter could explain phasing a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we've got with autosomal DNA, we've got 2 copies of each chromosome, with like 2 copies of chromosome 3, 2 copies of chromosome 17, and one we got from our father, one we got from our mother. And when you do a DNA test, you don't always. When you do the autosomal test, the results that you get, it can't tell whether a match that you have is through your father or through your mother. And it's through matching with other people that you can start trying to figure that out as to who you're matching, how it is that you're matching. And also, it's just the matching is kind of fuzzy in a sense that the way that it works, it's a little bit, I can't verbally explain it that well right now, but it's a fuzzy match, and with phasing, it's very much, exactly what the DNA you got from your father and what you got from your mother in your DNA. You know exactly. And when you have a match, you know it's through your paternal side or your maternal side, and that's much more powerful. I mean, you can match somebody on one segment of chromosome 3 and match another person on the same segment of chromosome 3, but one was through your father and one was through your mother. So, and because those 2 people don't match each other. And that's the thing is that's the thing you have to watch out for is that you think the shared ancestry is due to this couple, but it's actually not. It's anyway. It's phasing is very powerful and very helpful, and it's the direction that we want to go in, but it's very difficult for the average user to actually phase their data themselves. It's really the companies or some organization that needs to phase it for us, and then we can make use of the results. There is a way of doing triangulation, segment triangulation that you can do at GEDmatch, which is very useful, and everyone who has autosomal DNA results should make use of segment triangulation. There's also segment triangulation at DNA GEDCOM. And when you're using autosomal DNA, that's what you really need to pay attention to, is who matches on the same segment and also matches each other.
Thanks so much, Peter. One of the users in the forum posted this question, and it got me to thinking too, because I have something similar, an oddity. You know, we all have these odd things that we get from our ancestors. Michael Stills writes, I have my second great-grandmother's hair. Is it possible to get DNA from this? And I have to admit, I have my great-aunt's hair from 1915.
Okay. Okay, so there is a lab that does forensic testing. It's much better. Well, you need to, like, if you had a hat or if you had a hairbrush where you've actually the roots, the hair has pulled out the roots, then sometimes it's possible to get DNA from the root, the hair bulbs of the hair. But if it's cut hair, then you might only get mitochondrial DNA. It's much less expensive to try to find a living descendant to test them. But you're looking at you're getting into a few $1,000s if you have a DNA sample of, let's say, you know, you have a hunk of somebody's hair. You have a hat that's got lots of hair in it that was pulled out, you know, inside the hat. It may be possible to get the DNA, but it's you're looking at a couple $1,000s to do that. Ouch. And that's not relatively realistic. You can do the same thing with postage stamps in terms of if the ancestor licked the stamp and it's on an envelope, or if they sealed the envelopes, you can still get DNA from that quite often. But it has a lot to do in the storage conditions and how long ago they licked the envelope with the stamp. But you're still looking at high hundreds or $1,000 to get the results that you want, and you may not get any results. Is a scary thing.
Let's see. Tom has another question.
Back at the beginning, we talked briefly about SNPs. Can you kind of explain that and how they are used to further refine the results of genetic testing?
So a SNP is a single nucleotide polymorphism, and it's basically they've kind of estimated that in human history, there's at a particular location, there's only been maybe one mutation that's happened at that particular location on the Y chromosome, and that where it's a situation where, let's say, the letter A might change to a G or something like where one of the ACTG, one of those is changing to something else at that location, and that happens very rarely, but it does happen. It probably happens in maybe once each generation. The thing is, there's a lot of SNPs on the Y chromosome, and that's almost the perfect. It's an extremely accurate copying when you've only got one change on the Y chromosome like that. And so that's a SNP, and that defines anyone who has a change at that particular location. Their son is going to, any male that has that change, their son is going to get that change also. They're going to inherit that change. And they're going to give it to their son and their son and their son. And that's how we're able to reconstruct the descendant chart of ancestry for all males, is using those SNPs. And then the haplotypes, those STRs, the haplotypes, the 37 markers, that's something completely different, where you've really got, you've got something like CATG repeated 13 times, and then the son happens to get 14 repeats, and that's what we're looking at with haplotypes, where we're looking at the changes in the repetition, the number of repeats that we're getting at a particular location. We're not seeing a change from one letter to another. We're seeing more repeats or less repeats at a particular location, and that's the variability that we can find in the Y chromosome. I mean, a lot of the Y chromosome, there's a lot of similarity with, everyone on Earth has almost had an identical Y chromosome, all males, and so it took years to find one difference on the Y chromosome, in the early technology, but now we're able to find lots and lots more.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That's great. Kitty, you want to talk a little bit about what we've got going on in WikiTree with the DNA?
Well, on the WikiTree DNA project, we're encouraging folks that put on their profiles that they've taken a DNA test to join the DNA project. There's lots of information on the DNA project webpage about, what to do next, your results, what you should do if you're interested in getting a test but you don't know which one to go with. All kinds of information is available on the WikiTree DNA project webpage. And you get a little badge if you join us, so hey, you can't beat that. Also, if your test has been with family tree DNA, we now have our own WikiTree DNA project on family tree DNA, and so you can go into your family tree DNA account page and you can join the WikiTree DNA project, and that will display your markers so that everybody can see them that logs into the WikiTree page, the public page. Actually, that brings to mind, Peter, when we were talking earlier, you were talking about naming a project or naming a profile as anonymous. I usually name a profile for a DNA test participant as anonymous DNA to separate it from just anonymous, profiles. So that I know at a glance anyway, when I'm looking at anonymous DNA Smith, I can find my Smith DNA test.
That's a good idea.
Peter, we got a couple more questions over in the forum. Do you want to go ahead and take a few more now? Have you got about another 10 minutes?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to ask the first one that I'm seeing up here that's new. I thought it was interesting. Bill Rowan asks, my parents had DNA isolated from cheek swabs and archived. What company would test it? Can he just send that to any of the others that are the regular ones, or would that be a special case as well?
I would call Family Tree DNA. The other, if Family Tree DNA says, I would call Family Tree DNA, and then I would also call let's see, YSEQ. I think that was it. The Thomas Cran's company. I think that they will. The Thomas Cran can do testing on it. Also, if the Family Tree DNA cannot, but there are. But I would call around, and you can also post to one of the DNA forums, and you'll get ideas there also. But definitely, if you've got a DNA sample, there is a lab that will test it, so there's good hope.
Well, that's good to know. We've got another question over here in the forum too. Paul Richard Ellington asks, the big Y test has revealed many new SNPs. What's the time frame on getting these into the haplotree, as it seems from what he's read on the blogs that many of them have not been placed on the haplotree?
I think it's going to be within a year or two in terms of, now the thing is, okay, there is the haplotree being kept by Family Tree DNA, and then there's the Y haplotree that's being kept by ISOG. And I think that you're going to see more updates to the ISOG tree, and then just big changes periodically with the Family Tree DNA, the haplogroup tree there. And so I think, I would pay attention to the Y haplogroup tree at ISOG, ISOGG, because that's probably going to be the more up-to-date one. And I know that there's a Russian company that has a haplogroup tree, and I'm not keeping up with that. They're using a lot of the data that's coming out of Chrome 2, 2.0, and then also with Big Y. But that's anyway. But ISOG is trying to coordinate and have all the SNP information that they can and keep updating the tree, and so that's where I would focus.
Great. Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Chris. He's got another question from the forum area.
Thank you, Tammy. We got one last question here from our WikiTree leader, Michelle Hartley. Michelle asks, my husband's grandfather was adopted in the Czech Republic. There was only one male child. Is he the only one that could be tested to find a possible match?
Is he the only one that could be tested? Is that the question?
That's the information we have.
Okay,
Yeah, so there was one male child.
Okay, so that one male child of that adopted grandfather, he would have the Y chromosome, and so then I guess the only drawback is that how many of you have to speculate as to how many of the from the Czech Republic, how many people came to America or to other parts of Europe, because there's probably not a huge amount of Y-DNA testing that's been done in the Czech Republic. I mean, relatively smaller, but there is still testing. But definitely, that male, the son, has the Y-DNA, and they, for like $125 or so, they can get a decent Y-DNA test that will reveal that direct male line. And any really close matches, you're looking at a Y chromosome cousin, a direct paternal line cousin of some degree. And so that's useful. That can be very useful information. The other thing I don't know is how long ago did most people from that area of Europe adopt surnames? It's a very difficult thing for people of Jewish ancestry, like in Russia, because the adoption of surnames was relatively recent. So they have a lot of matching with a lot of different surnames.
Well, this has just been so informative. Anybody here on our panel have any other questions for Peter?
I got one more.
Tom, what a surprise. Great questions, though. Go ahead.
Can you explain a little bit about the correlation between genetic genealogy testing and testing for medical inherited medical conditions? Is there any?
Yes. The autosomal testing can be used for medical purposes. The thing is that that's what 23andMe was doing before the FDA shut down their the health reporting that they were doing. But I imagine they're going to get back to that. So right now they're just focusing on the genealogy. Now, Family Tree DNA has purposely tried to clean out basically any DNA results that have health-related implications in the autosomal. They have, in a sense, they're not reporting it, and so it's more difficult to use a family finder test, the autosomal DNA test from Family Tree DNA, in order to infer health-related issues. The thing is that it's a real mistake to try to take most of the autosomal DNA testing and then try to self-diagnose. It's a real mistake because it's a lot more complicated than the information that those tests reveal. In terms of, you could have an increased risk for some health issue, but it's only you're going from maybe like 5% chance of having it to 10% chance of having a particular health issue because of that particular mutation that you've got in your autosomal DNA. So you have to be careful. Anyway, the thing is that the important thing to realize is that the fact that you share a particular segment on a particular chromosome with somebody else is really not going to reveal anything of important genetic information, health related. It's really important for finding shared ancestry. You can back engineer it, but the common person really cannot do that. There are ways of getting health information out of the DNA results, but it's a heck of a lot of work.
Okay, thanks.
Again, thank you so much, Peter. We've been chatting with Peter J. Roberts about the DNA and WikiTree, and if you have any more questions, you can always post them over in the WikiTree G2G, Genealogist to Genealogist forum, and we're going to maybe post some links over in the forum area here for the Hangout so that people can go and check those out. Peter's also a guest blogger on the WikiTree blog. He does a monthly posting for us there. So if you have any questions, again, you can just put them over at the GDG forum. We'll see if we can get it going from there. Does anybody else, Chris, did you want to say anything else on this? Are we good to go for now?
I think that was great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Peter, and that was a wonderful job moderating, Tammy.
Thank you very much. All right, well, have a good evening, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.